Moving on to some other big news from over the weekend, and it came out today. The headline here from MMA Junkie is Khabib's manager is saying that George St. Pierre is next, not Tony Ferguson or irrelevant Conor McGregor. When we look into this article a little bit, it says that according to Khabib Nurmagomedov's manager, we won't be seeing the UFC lightweight champion face either Tony Ferguson or Conor McGregor next. Nurmagomedov submitted Dustin Poirier in the third round at UFC 242 to regain his title, and talks of a potential next started almost immediately. At the UFC 242 post-fight news conference, UFC President Dana White confirmed that former interim champion Ferguson, who's currently riding a 12-fight win streak, would be next if he wants the fight. And then later on just some quotes from Abdelaziz, Khabib's manager. He says that nobody really cares about what Tony says. Nobody gives really. As far as I know, GSP is next. That's what I want. Tony doesn't get what he wants. We get what Khabib wants. And if Khabib calls me and says he wants George St. Pierre, George St. Pierre will be next. And I tried to warn people when the whole GSP retirement thing was going on that don't buy into it too much, because he's kept the door open for a potential one-off with Khabib. That's what he wants. Khabib wants it. I don't like hearing this because I don't think the UFC is going to be so bold to go in the direction of Conor McGregor. But I will say that when I did hear Dana White say, oh, well, Tony's next, but if he doesn't take the fight, we'll go with Conor. Obviously, the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, so they're going to try to lowball Tony so bad that he turns the fight down and then give it to Conor is what they're going to then try to run with. Oh, well, he turned the fight down, which is ridiculous. The way that they just really the way they do Tony Ferguson is just unbelievable. But now I'm seeing GSP's name being brought in, and that's, I think, a lot more possible. There's a lot bigger of a possibility there, because I'm not sure that even the casual audience at this point is going to buy into the Conor McGregor hype, knowing that Tony Ferguson's on a 12-fight win streak, and they know that Conor needs to get in the win column before there's even sufficient hype, I think, for the Khabib rematch at this point. The GSP fight's a lot different. That's a mega super fight, a lot of legacy involved. It's a legit risk to Khabib. It'd be a very tough challenge for Khabib. So that one's a little bit different. It's still just, man, what more does Tony Ferguson need to do? And now I don't even feel like it's hearing this from Khabib's manager, Miguel. I don't even feel like it's just the UFC now. I feel like Khabib's and his team is almost starting to pull like a Mayweather-Pacquiao on Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson's 35 years old. It's almost like they're wanting to get a few more years underneath his belt and see if his legs start slowing down, see if he gets injured again before they push for that fight. What's your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, it's a mess. And, I think, to me, the most appealing fight is the Ferguson-Khabib fight. That's the most appealing fight of any of the fights that we're talking about. As you said, St. Pierre brings in a legend aspect, but I don't know if that's necessarily appealing. You know what I mean? When we saw him come back, we saw him work the system to his advantage. We saw a very selfish athlete in terms of, didn't want to defend the belt, wanted, to be put in super fights and wanted to only get what he wants and stuff. And he's, in fact, retired now because he didn't get exactly what he wanted. So, St. Pierre can stay retired as far as I'm concerned. I'm not a big fan of kowtowing to him. And again, we know that Bisping was a good fight for him, and that he would have been run over with some of the other 185-pounders. I could see him bowing out, but just in the way he did it, he didn't win my respect anyway, So now we all win, like you said, very disingenuous with the retirement. Very obvious that he was going to keep a door open. And if he does get what he wants, and that's what's going to be, he's a well-off guy. He didn't blow all his money. He doesn't have to fight. So he can wait around and get what he wants. And that's, if it's coming around now, then, yeah, I could see Khabib, being talked to by, outside parties who say to him, you're going to make double the money to fight George St. Pierre. And at this point, like I said, money begets money. He's enjoying it. I think the money that he's making makes him actually more powerful in his home country, that the money goes further. And he's at the point where he can build buildings, orphanages, schools, and things like that. Almost, a couple more of these fights, and Khabib is there. He was talking about helping Dustin Poirier because of how many Instagram followers he has and stuff, and adopting his T-shirt and stuff. Khabib's not a fool, and that's why the St. Pierre stuff, is probably starting to come around and make more sense to him.
Yeah, but that's also what kind of scares me about these whole negotiations right now with Khabib, because Khabib's now he's on like Conor levels. He just got paid $6 million for that fight over there in Abu Dhabi, and he's become such a big star now. And I believe I heard that Dustin Poirier only got like $250,000. And you come to some guys like Tony Ferguson and Nate Diaz, they're going to walk away from those kind of negotiations when they're looking at that big of a lopsided deal in pay. And Tony Ferguson is the fight to make, obviously. I mean, that there's so much. 4 different times that fight's been matched up. Fell through all 4 times. And every time that fight's just continued to get better. Tony Ferguson's on a 12-fight win streak. These guys have a 27-1 combined UFC record at this point. And they're so far ahead of the game. They've cleaned out really the best weight class in the sport that people have been saying for about 8 years now. And I mean, there's so much legacy behind that, but then you bring in George St. Pierre, and there's some legacy there too, because you got 2 of the greatest fighters that we've ever seen in Khabib and St. Pierre. Both of them beat everybody they've ever fought. GSP's avenged both of his losses triumphantly, and Khabib is undefeated, obviously. So there's some storyline there, but just like you said about the word disingenuous when it comes to St. Pierre, I remember when he just gave that retirement announcement and he talked about it wouldn't be fair of him to just come in, take a title right off into the sunset. And it's just like, man, we've seen this story before. Just a few years ago, you did the same exact thing. He was out there clamoring, saying, I'm gonna walk away. I'm gonna retire if you don't give me the Bisping fight. He wins the Bisping fight, wins the middleweight title, and then literally vacates it the very next week and just walks away, gives up the belt. They make the interim champion, Robert Whittaker, at the time, the champion. I don't know where this is going to go. I think the St. Pierre fight, I'm hoping that this is just all talk on the part of Khabib's manager. Javier Mendez was on Ariel Helwani earlier this week, Khabib's trainer, and he says that he wants the Tony fight. Dana's indicating that he wants the Tony fight, although I think he wants the Conor fight more than anything, but which makes me a little bit nervous, as I said, about them lowballing Tony, trying to get him to like basically pull himself out of the fight. Like, no, I'm not going to take those negotiations. Then running with, oh, well, you backed out of the fight, so we're just going to go with Conor now, or St. Pierre, which would be, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to pull some of those kind of works on somebody like Tony Ferguson. They've done it before. But I'm hoping that they can get this Tony fight done for late December, January, February at the latest. Get that fight out of the way. And then after that, we'll see where it goes with Conor. We'll see where it goes with St. Pierre. I'd be up for anything at that point. But the Tony fight has got to happen. It's been long overdue. And I think anything other than that would be really a travesty at this point.